Church. We are glad that you are here with us today. Thank you for joining us here, and thank you for online. Thank you for being here with us. And we welcome you on this beautiful Sunday morning, on this bright sunny day with a beautiful breeze. So we hope that you enjoy yourselves today. Really quickly, we have our welcome cards here at Silver Creek Church. And those that are here, if you're our first-time visitors, we're asking that if you will, to go ahead and fill these out and give us some information. We have some good things coming up here at Silver Creek Church, and also our very own Pastor Matt will be happy to hear from you. So if you will, please go ahead and fill that out if you can. Also, we have any restrooms, and our children's ministry is downstairs here in the office, and also our gift station. You can give here at Silver Creek Church, or you can also give online to help bless this community and the people. Also, August 16th, we want you to mark your calendars. We are having a Sunday brunch, August 16th. And we're partnering here at Birch One with a local restaurant who will supply the majority of food. So if you want to, you can bring items in, but you do not have to. But we would like for you to come out and join us and have a good time here with us. Again, my name is Kristen Chamberlain, and any questions that you may have, come and please ask me. We'll be more than willing to help you. And with no further ado, our very own Pastor Matt will be coming to speak with us about faith. So sit back, enjoy, and welcome to Silver Creek Church.
All right, again, good morning. Welcome to Silver Creek Church. We are excited about the topic today. I am excited. You don't even know what it is yet. But today, our topic is faith. Yeah, I didn't expect it. Faith is one of those topics that's like, it's like telling your kids, today we're going to talk about nutritious food. And the kids are like, okay. But if you say today we're going to talk about ice cream, and the kid says, faith is one of those topics that it's talked about in every religion, every belief system. They talk about faith. So it's not something exclusive to just Christians. It's not something exclusive to just Jesus followers. And if you look at the Webster Dictionary, which I did, at the definition of faith, I'll read to you what they've got in there. It's a belief, a trust, and loyalty to God. That's the first answer. It's a belief in the traditional doctrines of a religion. It's a firm belief in something for which there is no proof. Or it's something that is believed especially with strong conviction. And I think all of us can hear those definitions and think, yeah, okay, yeah, that sounds like faith. If you grew up in my generation, there's a song that George Michael did, Gotta Have Faith. No, right? I don't think of George Michael for some reason when I think of faith, but that song comes to mind when I think of faith. And faith can be confusing because there's a lot of definitions, there's a lot of mystery around this definition of what faith is. And depending on what church you go to or what denomination, they're going to have a different angle on which they teach it. And I have to make a confession because as a pastor, I've been in ministry now for over 20 years. As a lead pastor now for less than a year. But one thing I have to tell you is that as pastors or even priests, if you've been associated with priests, clergy of any kind, I think we've made faith more complicated than we should. I think oftentimes we want to try to add something to the definition to try to answer questions because people have questions about faith. People walk away from their faith, they'll say, well, I walked away from my faith because this happened. And oftentimes, the what happened has a lot to do with expectations that that person had either in God or in the other people in the church or the pastor, but expectations that weren't fulfilled. Like, I expected this is what it would be like, and it wasn't this way. Or I expected that God would do this, and it didn't happen. And it causes people to question God. They question their faith. So what is faith really? And we're going to answer that today. What is faith really? And I'll tell you what it's not. It is not some sort of invisible force. It's not some sort of power. It's not like, if you've ever seen Wonder Woman, some people believe that, like Wonder Woman, you've got the magic lasso. And if you can just get this lasso around God's neck, then you can steer God where you want him to go. I want you to do this, God. I want you to do that, God. And if I have enough faith, if I have enough belief, if I pray hard enough, I can wield that power. Or I'll learn how to use this mysterious power, and I'll have this invisible lasso and pull God in a direction. But you're not Wonder Woman. That's not who we are. We're not superheroes who have been granted some godlike power, and now we can tell God what we want him to do. We often think if we just try harder, like maybe I'm not studying the Bible enough. Maybe I need to talk to people who have been Christians longer and find out, okay, how do you pray? When you pray, what do you do? Like, how do I apply my faith to get that secret where God will hear my prayer and answer my prayer every time I want something done? What is it I got to do to get that done? We all want the shortcut. We all want the quick, simple answer. We hate it when we don't have an answer to something. We hate it when we're talking to somebody at work and they say, yeah, when I was a kid, I got mad at God because I prayed and prayed for him to heal my dad, and my dad died. Or I asked God to heal my sick sister or my cousin, and to heal it, make it all go away and make it better, and God didn't do that. This is real life. This is what happens. And I think all of us can think of a time in our life where we really wanted God to do something, and God didn't do it. And whether we're here today, we're like, well, I just put it out of my mind, I try to think about it, or whether we're like, well, it's always been there. You know what? Not to say that, Pastor Matt, that's always bothered me. It's always nagging at me. And maybe you've heard a church teach that if you just try harder, you got to have more faith. If it didn't happen, it's because you didn't have enough faith. The ball's in your court. If God wants to heal everyone, they'll say. And so it's up to us as people to figure out the magic code to get God to do that. What is it you're missing? But here's the thing. If enough people, we sometimes think, if enough people have enough faith, like we'll gather a bunch of people together, maybe we can get a lot of people together, and then God will hear that prayer and make it happen. But we think we can get God to do things that God wasn't planning on doing. And maybe you've gone to a church before that taught just that if you get enough people together, you can sway God and change his mind. And it caused you to be confused when it didn't happen. Because you believed and you believed and you prayed and you prayed. You prayed hard. On your knees. Powerful prayers, but it still didn't happen. God didn't answer your prayers. You began to wonder, is there a God and is he even listening or care about me? So an answer to that might be, well, if I can just figure out that invisible power, that invisible force, like a Jedi Knight. Maybe I could be a Jedi Knight warrior. For those of you that are older, maybe knights in white satin. I think I went too far back on it. But that's called magic. That's called paganism. That's not the faith of a follower of Jesus. Many years ago, I took Rachel to Las Vegas. So I'm confessing something here. Sin City! I took her, because here's the thing. This is many years ago. I said I wanted to start something with my wife. I wanted to make sure we had a strong marriage. So I said, from now on, once a year, we're going to have a getaway. Just the two of us, a romantic getaway of some sort. There may be some years that we can't afford much, so it might be Frankenmuth. There might be other years that we can afford something and we'll go to someplace great, like the Bahamas maybe or something. And we've done that every year since. We've done simple things just down the road where we just got to wait to a hotel for a weekend. And we've done elaborate things like taking cruises, which, by the way, we love. I highly recommend it. But this particular time, it was our first time, I said, we're going to go to Las Vegas. Because I heard people talk about, Las Vegas just isn't about gambling. Las Vegas has other things too. It's like an adult Disneyland. I'm like, oh, okay, I like Disneyland, and I'm an adult now. All right, so, hey, so let's go to Las Vegas, And I remember people in my church at the time were like, "You're going where? What?" And it was hard for them to believe. And I said, well, it's got things to do other than gambling. So it was something. I mean, we saw this one huge casino that was all designed around Egypt. It was like a pyramid. That was so cool to look at inside. And we went to another one where they had a roller coaster at the top of like this tall skyscraper type building. A roller coaster you could go on. And they had another one that was like medieval themed, like medieval knights and stuff. And so we spent a lot of time just walking around and looking and just taking in all these incredible things. All this tons of money that was spent create these elaborate, crazy, like Disneyland type hotels and casinos. But every time we walked out of a hotel room, you have to walk through the casino. Now, they designed them that way, I guess. you can't just go to the hotel, and the casino's like a different building. It's all right there. You walk through the casino to get to your hotel room. And every time I walked by, I'd see the slot machines, I'd see the tables, and I have to tell you, I was curious. I thought, wow, that's something. Look at all those people. They look like they're having a nice time. And I'm sure you can't lose all the time. I'm sure you must win some of the time. And this thought began to go through my head. I thought, this is honest, I'm telling you, this thought went through my head. I thought, what if, because I've never played a slot machine in my life, but what if, I was looking at these slot machines, what if I went up and put a quarter in there? And what if I was that guy that put one quarter in, and the alarms go off, the bells ring, woo, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner, everybody comes around, and they gather around, I was like, wow, and the reporters, what happened? I just put one quarter in, and I guess God blessed me. I don't know. And I thought, wow, imagine the good things I could do for Christianity, the good things I could do for my church if I won $50,000 or the jackpot prize of $100,000. I could do a lot of really good things if I won that. So this is all going through my mind as we're walking around about, maybe I should play that. Just give it one shot one time and just see what happens. Who knows what could happen? I mean, it's just a quarter. So I decide I'm going to do it. I walk up to one and I said, Rachel, I just want to try it and see what happens. Who knows? And she said, all right. I couldn't find one that was a quarter, but I found one that was $1. So I went into that one, put the $1 in, and we're both like, okay, I don't know how these work, but I'm envisioning it. I'm seeing that envision in my mind of what would, imagine, it would be so amazing. What would happen if I pull this down and we win? And what will I do with the money? I was already thinking what I'll do with the money. So I'm like, all right. So I pull the thing down, and of course Rachel and I are looking at each other and looking at the machine because we don't know what to expect. I mean, it's spinning and doing things, and it's like cha-ching, cha-ching, and it stops moving, and I'm looking at Rachel, and she looks at me. I think Rachel said something like, is that it? And I'm like, well, I guess so. Nothing happened. I guess we didn't win. No bells went off, no alarms. It was just like, oh, okay. And we spent the rest of our time there and went home. Haven't been back since. We drove through once. We were driving through. We wanted our kids to see what it looked like, just driving through. But it was a nice time to get away, but whatever. But here's the thing. I think oftentimes in Christianity we look to God like He's a slot machine. I think in Christianity oftentimes we think, okay, Lord, I'm going to pray just right. Lord, please, this time, let this be the time. I know maybe it didn't work out before, but this time, I need you to come through for me, God. Daddy needs a paycheck. Come on. I need you to come through me, Lord. I need you to make this happen. I'm gonna pray for it this time. And I think we look at it that way. That are you gonna pray? Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'll pray. I'll give it a shot. I'll see what happens. Maybe if I put enough time in prayer, or if I do enough Bible reading, or if I help in the Sunday school classes, if I put in enough Sundays helping and coming in early, I'll pull that wheel. It'll be my lucky day, and something great's gonna come out of this situation. And when you have that kind of a God, though it may not be at the forefront of your mind, but in the back of your mind, if you're thinking, I hope this is the time, you're going to be disappointed. And you're going to be confused, maybe mad. Because here's the thing, this is the truth. Faith is not a formula. Faith is not something that you can examine, calculate, dissect, and figure out. There's not a pin code. There's not a code that if I could just break the code, the Omega code, if I could break the code, God will start spitting stuff out. If you ever go to a church, or if you ever have someone tell you that, well, you just got to keep coming to church, just, because look at me, everything works out for me, just keep coming to church. And if you buy my book, if you attend enough times, if you give your money to this, keep coming, eventually it'll happen for you too, you might want to question that person. If someone tells you that you just got to put in more time, you just got to put in more faith, they could be misleading you. And the answer to this question is answered. The answer to this question is in the Bible. The answer to this question was answered by Jesus. And that's what we're going to look at right now, because the author of the book of Hebrews, this is where we're going to start. He invites you and I to fix our eyes on Jesus, to unfix our eyes on everything else for all the other places we might be looking for an answer, other people, but look to Jesus. Don't look to pastors. Look to Jesus for your answer. And they actually give us the definition, a clear definition of faith. But here's the scary thing. The verse that we're about to look at, you've probably seen before. So I want to ask you to look at this with new eyes. I want to ask you to, when you see this verse, not to just automatically jump to the conclusion of, oh, I know what that means, or I know what's going on. Just look at it with fresh eyes today, because I want you to see something that maybe you've never seen before. Because many of us grew up in church, and many of us have heard this taught. And I have to confess that most of my Christian life, I taught this wrong myself. But when I researched it, when I dug in, and I found I'm not the only one. This has been taught thousands of years, what I'm about to teach you. Other definitions of faith are pretty recent. Other definitions of faith have only been around for 60, 70 years now. These other ideas of this magical, invisible force power. That's just been a pretty recent thing. But we're going to go back a couple thousand years to the original text, to the original version, to look for our answers. So here's what we're going to look at. Look at Hebrews chapter 11. Thanks to my wife's beautiful handwriting, I have something to look at this one. Yes. All right. So here we go. 11. We're going to look at verse 1. Now faith is. Let's just stop right there for a minute. I want to explain something. The book that we're looking at is Hebrews. And so it's written to Hebrews. Hebrews being Jewish people. So being as this is written to Jewish people, I want you to understand that. But here's another up the side that you not realize. That during this time, faith was, the faith of believing in Jesus Christ was spreading all throughout. And it wasn't just to the Jewish believers like it started at the beginning. Now it's reaching to what they call Gentiles. It's reaching to people that were not Jewish. And so even though it's written to Hebrews, it's applying to all of us. So I just want to make that clear to everybody. It's written to Hebrews specifically, but he knows this. And he's taking this in mind, which we'll look at here in just a second. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for. Let's look at this word hope for a second. Let's think about hope. What is hope? Hope is hope. Hope is hope. Hope is empty, if you think about it. There's no guarantee to hope. There's no, if somebody says, I hope you'll do this, or I hope this happens, there's no guarantee. It's not promised. I hope I'll get a raise this year. I hope I'll get a bonus this year. It's hope. I really hope I'm going to get married someday. It's hope, because you haven't met that person yet. Maybe it just hasn't been proposed yet. Maybe I hope I'm going to have children. Maybe somebody say, I hope I have 2 children. I hope I have 8 children. Maybe like Autumn. Autumn probably wants 8. You want 8 children. No? No. 8 children. I mean, and for some of you, maybe you only have 2 or 3 now. There's still time. This can still happen. You can always adopt. I mean, there's ways to fill your quiver, as it's talking about. So, but we all have hopes, but hopes are just based on nothing. It's kind of empty. It's just a hope. So as we see this word hope, I want to talk about, because faith happens when hope so becomes confidence in it is happening. Faith becomes a reality when hope so moves to confidence that something is going to happen. Something is going to happen. That's faith. Hope so is just hoping. And at first, like if you meet a special person, at first you can say, I hope he's the one. I hope he's the one. But maybe you run into your friend weeks or months later, and you say, so how's it working out? And they say, oh, he's the one. Or, oh, she's the one. And, okay, wait a minute. It's just been a few weeks. What's changed? Well, what's changed is they've gotten to know each other more. They've had some experience together. They've had some time to live life together, to watch each other go through maybe some conflicts or go through some struggles. And when they watch how a person responds, it helps to change something from what was once a hope to assurance. Now next, the author of Hebrews basically makes the same statement in a second way. So we're going to look at this. Here's how he says it. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and it's assurance about what we do not see. It's assurance about what we just don't or can't see right now. come back to the idea of a raise. Everybody wants a raise. You hope for a raise. And it's just a hope until that day your boss walks into your office, your boss walks into your area where you're working, your boss says to you, you know what, you've been doing a great job, I'm going to give you a raise. Now it's just change. It's a game changer. You don't go home after that and say, okay, my boss came in and talked to me today, so I hope I'm getting a raise. The person you're talking to will say, well, wait, you hope you're getting a raise. So what did your boss say? My boss came up to me and said, I've been doing a great job and they're going to give me a raise. You're getting a raise! There's no reason to hope anymore. It's happening. Why is it happening? Because your boss said so. Boss said I'm going to get a raise. And so because it was said, because it was promised, I know it's going to happen. So the reason you know you're going to get a bonus isn't because someone told you you're going to get a bonus. It's because once they told you, you knew you could trust that person. And once they tell you, hope becomes faith. It all begins with a promise. You hope that they'll ask you on a date. You hope they'll ask you out for a date. You hope and you hope, and then suddenly you get the text. Will you go out with me this Friday night? And now hope turns into, I'm going out this Friday night. It's happening now. It turns into, you've got faith that's going to happen. It's going to take place. Faith is confidence that God is real and God will do what he's promised to do. That stays still for us. Faith is just, you know that God's going to do what he promised to do. He's going to do that. He's real. This is basically the working definition of faith. That faith is confident that God is and he'll do what he's promised to do. I don't believe in God because of faith. Like, it's not faith, that invisible faith that causes me to have my basis of my belief in God. It's not. I believe in God because I've seen God's promises come to pass. Faith is confidence that God is, and the reason we believe God is not because of faith. We believe God is because of evidence. We don't believe God keeps his promises just because of faith. We believe it because God keeps his promises, and we can see he's kept his promises before. Now, if we flip back to this verse, number 1, keep it down here. This next for us. Try to get that. Wind helps. Then we're looking to see, okay, now faith is confidence in what we hope for. It's confidence in what we hope for. It's the assurance of what we see. So we have confidence and assurance. Not based on a hope. It's not based on, gee, I really hope it works out if I can do something right. It's an assurance that you feel after a promise has been made. The author gives us, we don't have time today to go through the rest of chapter 11, but if we did go through it, the author goes on and on talking about example after example of where God has shown his faithfulness, he's kept his promises. You see, to the Hebrews, they knew about what they would call their ancestral heroes, or what they would call their ancients, is what they called them. For us, for example, if I said George Washington, you'd have pictures come to mind because we've all learned about George Washington in our elementary school. If I said Abraham Lincoln, you're all going to think about Abraham Lincoln because we learned about that in our elementary school. That's how it was for the Hebrews. These examples that he began giving about Moses, examples about Abraham, they all knew those stories. They knew that God had made promises to these people in the past, and they knew from evidence that it was years ago, and they could look back now and say, God did that. God definitely did that. And so the author of Hebrews begins giving these examples, how the famous Jewish people and all the stories. And what each of them had in common was that they had a promise from God, and they expected it would happen. They believed God is, and they believed that God does what he promises to do. Think about Noah. Noah had to build something called an ark or a boat. But you got to realize, it had never rained before. They woke up every day and the ground was just nice and wet, so the crops grew. Everything was fine, but there was no such thing as rain. So first thing that happens, whether it was a vision Noah had or whether God audibly spoke to him, Noah believed very clearly that God gave him instructions. First, God said it's going to rain. Okay, it's never rained before, so something never heard of. Then God says, okay, we're going to build a boat. And it's like, well, you don't know what a boat is. You've never seen a boat before. But just trust me on this. You're going to build something you've never seen before, never used before, for something you've never been in called water, which, by the way, if you don't know how to swim, which you don't understand swimming because you never swam before, but if you don't swim, you'll drown. If you drown, you're going to die. Well, what's drowning? Well, it's hard to explain. God didn't have to explain it. He just said, look, here's what you're going to do. Build a boat. There's more things that you can see right now that are going to happen, but you've got to trust me. Trust me on my instructions. So Noah did. Noah built a boat in the middle of summer, like on a day like today, with all his neighbors looking and going, what are you doing? Imagine God said to you very clearly, an audible voice, Kristen, I want you to begin building a spaceship. I know you've never been to space. I know you probably don't know all of the laws of physics involved with making sure you put the right amount of rocket fuel break through the atmosphere and get into space. You got to deal with zero G gravity and making sure the cabin's pressurized to the right amount of oxygen and fuel ratio. But I'm going to give you all the instructions for that, God says. And you begin building a rocket in your backyard tomorrow. What are they going to say in the news? What are the neighbors going to start doing, right? You're going to be like, I mean, I don't know. It'd be a little embarrassing one day. I'm just like, hello. People would say, you've lost your mind. Why are you building that? Well, God told me we're going to lose our atmosphere. We're going to need a rocket ship. Okay. But this is what it's like for Noah. Noah had never heard of rain. Noah had never heard of water. It was unheard of. It was crazy. But Noah did it anyways because he had some invisible power of faith. No. He knew what God had done before. Because he knew what God did before, he said, I can trust what I'm hearing right now that I'm going to do this. It's based on evidence. And again, in Hebrews, it goes all throughout chapter 11, giving this example. Abraham. How many of you have ever heard of Abraham? Raise your hand if you've heard of the Abraham, Father Abraham. Raise your hands. Okay, most hands are up. And I expected that. Most people have heard of Abraham. And God made a promise to Abraham. And Abraham believed God's promise and acted on that promise. You see, 2,000 years ago, God spoke. Or excuse me, 2,000 years before Jesus, to correct myself, 4,000 years. 2,000 years before Jesus even was on the scene, God had spoken to Abraham and said, something's going to happen here. And here's what he does. Let's look at Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12, verse 2. Here's what he says. God is saying this, I will make you into a great nation. Okay, first of all, how do you make a person into a nation? That happened first be the question in his mind. What do you mean they're going to make me into a nation? But I think he figured it out pretty quick. And if you think about it now, see, we can look back on this now. We know that, wow, Abraham wasn't just made into one nation, he was made into several nations. And the verse continues, I will make your name great. I will make your name great. And you will be a blessing. I will make your name great. Now, if God said to me, I'm going to make your name great, I'd say, what? I don't know. What's that mean? What do you mean I'm going to make your name great? But think about it. Everybody here knew who he was. We all knew who he was when I said that. I'd say that's a pretty good proof that his name is made great. Everyone knows about the guy. Even if people watching online, you probably know what the guy too. But God continues in verse 3. He talks about God's blessing. He ends this with a powerful statement that I want to look at. He continues to talk about how much he's going to bless them. And he finishes off with this right here. This is what we want to know. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Okay, well, that didn't make any sense to Abraham because think about it now. Back in the time when this was written, back in the time when God spoke to Abraham, you got to understand, people weren't there to bless other people. No, I took care of my own village, my own clan, my own family, and they conquered each other. It was survival of the fittest. The person with the biggest sword wins. The person with the biggest army wins. The most power, the meaner, the tougher, they're the winners. They're the ones who make the rules. They're the ones who conquer. So this is what's going on. So God's saying, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Well, I think what God's saying is, I'm starting to do something new. something brand new, just like with Noah, just like time after time and continuing now today. God can't be pinned down to one thing. He's always doing something new, something we never heard of, something we can never imagine. And God is doing something new. God says, Abraham, doing something new with you, something brand new. A new system is going to be happening. I'm going to turn you into a nation. Your nation is not going to simply be there to bless itself. It's going to be there to bless all the surrounding tribes and their families. You will be blessed, but others will be blessed as well. The entire earth will be blessed. Well, let's think about it. Is there evidence of this? Every year, December 25th, what do we celebrate? We celebrate the birth of a little baby in a manger in Bethlehem, Jesus Christ, who is a descendant. Imagine that. I think it continues to happen to this day. It's a blessing. It brings joy to everyone. It's a fulfillment of a promise made thousands of years ago that God made to Abraham. So back to the author of Hebrews. I want to talk about this. So remember now, this is during the time, this is after Jesus had been crucified. Jesus had risen from the dead. And these ancient Jewish people are looking forward to this promise. That all these people, in verse number 13, that all of these people were still living by faith when they died. So when he's telling the story of Moses, Abraham, all the different, goes on and on. And here's what he says, all of these people, all of them, Moses, Noah, all of them were still living by faith when they died. What he's saying here is, you don't always see the entire promise come fulfilled. If Abraham could see what's happening now, if he stood here, mind blown. He'd be like, now I see what God fully did. But did that mean he didn't really believe it then? Did that mean he didn't really act on it then? No. He lived and believed and acted as if God is real and God fulfills the promises that he makes. Nobody assumed they could faith God into something or talk God into something. Nobody uses faith as magic in this time. Nobody uses faith as a leverage, believing they can get God to do what they want God to do for them. God can't be manipulated. God was in fact to be worshipped, and God could be trusted. And right now here in America, year 2020, right now here in America, we have something kind of scary going on. We have this crazy coronavirus thing happening. And we have people who are on two sides of a belief about the coronavirus. You have one camp over on this side who says, okay, I don't think it's really all that real. I mean, yeah, there's some sickness that happens, but don't believe everything you see here. You're being lied to. It's all a big scam. It's all a big political thing. And you'll see here soon, you're going to find out it's all just make-believe. It's not real. That's one side. And on the other side, you've got people who are like, okay, I am moving my family to the Upper Peninsula. We're going to get a cabin in the middle of the woods where nobody's around us, and we're going to survive. We're going to survive here and hunker down. Don't let anybody around us. We don't want to catch it. We don't want to die. So you've got people on two sides here. Somewhere in the middle, I think, is where all of us live. Because you hear both sides, but here's the thing. People on both sides are both affected by fear. People on both sides are both feeling afraid of something. They're responding two different ways. One says it's not real, it's not real. One says get the heck out of town, we're all going to die. But somewhere in there, they're both responding to something they're afraid of, something that scares them, something they have no control of. And I think that's what bothers us the most, is when we have no control. And this is nothing new. Jesus and the disciples were surrounded by this when Jesus walked the earth. They were surrounded by a disease that struck fear into people like you've never seen. It's called leprosy. We've never smelled leprosy in a person when we approach them. We've never seen it. We've never been around it, so we don't really know, but they were. They were around that. They lived around that every day. And people were scared to death that they would get leprosy. And so they created colonies for the people who had it and tried to get them away from them as far as they could. But Jesus wasn't afraid of his people. Jesus wasn't afraid of leprosy. And in fact, We know in Luke chapter 5, verse 12, that a man with leprosy approached Jesus. And when he approached Jesus, he fell at the feet of Jesus. And he made a statement. And I think this statement is the perfect example of perfect faith. And what faith is. He said, Lord, talking to Jesus, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And this making me clean was their way of saying healed from this leprosy that I have. If you're willing, you can make me clean. Not, Lord, I believe you will, and if I can just believe harder, if I can just have enough faith, then you can heal me. That's presumption. Lord, I have faith that if you're willing, you can. Why would a leper be absolutely confident that Jesus could heal him? Because he knew Jesus had healed other people. He had heard Jesus had healed other people. He had seen Jesus heal other people, so he knew it could happen. Not because he had great faith, not because he was, filled with some mystical, magical, invisible power or force, but it's because he saw and heard evidence. And because of what he'd seen, because of what he'd heard, he believed and he knew. He just had this faith, this confidence that Jesus could do it. Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. After this, and social distancing is out the window at this point. He broke the social distance rule. He reached out and touched the guy. And in those times, they called that dangerous and irresponsible. You never touch someone with leprosy. You just don't do that. You're not supposed to do that. But Jesus did it anyways. And the amazing thing is that when Jesus touched this man, and he touched other people that were unclean, he didn't acquire their disease. The opposite happened. They were healed. Jesus reached out and touched the man, and I love what he says. Jesus said, I am willing. In other words, that's all the faith you need. You don't need something great, mystical, and powerful. Just the fact that you've asked me and you asked if I'm willing. And it happened. I mean, think about this for just a second. Jesus didn't heal every person he came in contact with or saw. He didn't. Otherwise, the scriptures would say clearly, that's noteworthy. Here's written in scriptures. Every single person that Jesus ever saw or even fell on his shadow or was within 50 feet of were healed. Every person around Jesus, because they had great faith, were healed. The Bible doesn't say that. The Bible's specific about certain individuals, certain encounters Jesus had, and certain ones were healed. So in other words, it's no different today than it was then. We see it happen sometimes, other times it doesn't happen. Now the problem is with the definition of faith that we're taught, because you were probably taught that faith was more like a force. They may not have used that word, but you were taught that there was a power. There was some way that if you could have enough faith, you could get God to do something that you need to get done for you. Mysterious, elusive, hard to pin down. And often people resist this simple definition of faith. And I'll tell you why they resist this simple definition of faith we're talking about today. I'll tell you why preachers resist preaching it. I'll tell you why Christians resist it. Because of one thing. It leaves God in control. It leaves God in control, not us. I'm kind of glad God's in control. If God had answered those prayers as I look back through my life, when I was 16, if God had answered those prayers, I'm so glad he didn't. When I was 25, when I was 30, I remember prayers that I prayed. God, I need you to do this. Looking back now, man, I'm glad he didn't do that. Whew. Because I didn't know. I'm not all knowing. I can pray, God, I need rain. I need rain right now. Because I want rain in my crops, but I don't know what else is happening on the other side of town. I don't know what's going on in other people's lives that live around me. I can't see everybody. I can't see everything. See, we can ask for things that we don't have any clue what we're asking for. So how could we be in charge? How could we be in control? So I don't know about you, but I'm glad God's in control. Anytime we think that we can do something to get Almighty God, to do something that Almighty God's not planning to do, that's not Christianity, that's manipulation. That's not trusting God. That's not trusting that God knows best. It's not giving complete trust in our Creator, who created us and created everything we're in, who made our bodies with this incredible, miraculous ability that if it cuts, it heals back. It's a miracle. God created that into us, and we need to trust that creator. But it hurts our feelings. When God doesn't answer our prayer, it hurts our feelings. When God doesn't come through when I want him to come through for me, it doesn't work out the way I want it to work out, it bothers me. And if you go by our previous definitions you've heard, you'll question yourself, you'll question your own faith, question if God cares about you, maybe God loves other people more than me, and you lose faith. But we lose faith that was founded on and based on something it was never supposed to be based on to begin with. And here's why this is such a big deal to me. Here's why this is such a big deal to Silver Creek Church. This is why it's such a big deal to us. And if you're parents, I'm going to tell you why this should be a big deal for parents as well. A generation of people that we live in right now, an entire generation of people that we're living in right now, are abandoning faith because the church has signed God's name to something God didn't promise to do. An entire generation, an entire group of people are abandoning faith because the church has signed God's name to promises that God never made. We signed God's name to promises that he never made. And they want answers. I thought God was supposed to do this. No wonder you doubted. No wonder you couldn't maintain confidence in that God. Because you're holding God accountable to things that he's never promised to do. Here's the point. Here's the point. The trustworthiness of God was settled at the cross, not by answered prayer. You can trust God because of what he did on the cross, not because he answers or doesn't answer your prayers. That's the gospel. That's the point of all this. It's the gospel in its simplest form. But regardless of what's happened in my life, regardless of good things or bad things that happen in my life, my faith isn't based on that. My faith is based on knowing that God is who he is and he does what he promises to do. And Jesus Christ gave his life for us on the cross. Remember the ancients. We talked about the ancients a little while ago. They looked forward to, they believed that someday they'd see the fulfillment of the promise that was made to them. They believed in a God fulfilling the extraordinary one, of God fulfilling his promise to Abraham. That God said, I'm going to bless the nations through you. They didn't see that yet, but they believed it was going to happen. They never lost faith. And now in 2020, we're on the other side of that. It's undeniable now. You can look back and say, well, absolutely that happened. It's unmistakably true. The evidence is just built up. It's mountains. It's all around us. It's overwhelming. That God does keep his promises. He kept his promises to the world, and he keeps his promises to you. So all of us have been invited to do one thing. Simply fix our eyes on Jesus. Not because of faith. Because he's provided evidence enough for us to believe. But we resist the simple definition of faith. We resist it because we like being in control. We like having some sort of control of what's going to happen. We don't like the feeling like we're feeling. This coronavirus has a lot of people angry because they don't have control. They're being told what they have to do, and we don't like that. We resist that. In America, our land of liberty and freedom, I love our country. But sometimes it builds this idea in us as Americans that we can have it our way, right away, right now. I can have what I want right now. I'm in control of my life. I can tell God what's going to happen. And that's not the way God designed us or created us to be. We're to trust him. Believe in him. So God is in control. But I think that's exactly who should be in control. And God has the whole world in his hands. Both you and me. He's got the whole world in his hands. And that's the best hands to be in. That's the hands that we're supposed to be in. Right there. And so faith is believing that Jesus Christ is who he said he is. That Jesus Christ is here. That he's here to help us. But we can't control him. There's no invisible force that we can wield and get God to do our bidding. But we know, Lord, if you're willing, I know you can. When I pray, Father, if you're willing, I know you can do this. But God, if you do or you don't, I trust you either way. I trust you either way. It's going to affect the way I serve you. I trust you either way. I recently heard about a person who almost died from the COVID-19. His name's Stuart Hall. If you ever watched North Point online, you can watch this interview they had with him, where he almost died several times. It's a riveting story. It's powerful. Where this guy was one of these people who's in a hospital fighting for his life. His body was shutting down. It hit him in the worst possible way. This is a young guy. He's not that old. And through the process that went on for 2 months, about the first month in, his wife, who had not been able to see him, imagine this, not being able to see your spouse for a month and getting phone calls each day with updates saying, well, I'm sorry, he's dying. His body's just, it's shutting down. I could go on and tell you more about it. We don't have the time. But what I want to talk about is what his wife said. His wife went home. You know, sometimes she'd go to the parking lot of the hospital and just pray in the parking lot. That's as close as she could get. Or she did sometimes go into the hospital to sign papers or release forms for some other experimental process they wanted to try. They tried that malaria medication on him, and it drove him worse. It made it worse for him. It didn't work. So they had lost all hope. They had tried everything they knew to do. And the doctors told her, basically, prepare yourself, your husband's going to die. So she goes home. She has a prayer. She says, God, thank you for the incredible life we've had so far. Thank you for all the years that we've enjoyed in marriage. They're both Christians. We just thank you for what we've accomplished serving you. And she had that moment where she said, you know what, I relinquished control. I said, God, if you need to take it, take it. It's okay. I'm going to continue serving you, whatever you do. I know you can, and I trust you. But whatever you just do, I'm okay with that. And in that moment of surrender, shortly after that, she gets a call saying, you're not going to believe it. He's doing better. Here's what I found in my life. Every time I come to a wall where I feel like I don't know what to do, I've learned to surrender. I've learned to get down on my knees and say, God, don't do what I've asked. Do what you need to do. Do what you need to do. If it requires my life, if I give up my life, I will do it because, God, I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe your promises. And so I'm not believing you because I want great things for myself. I'm not believing you because I want a long life for myself. I'm believing you because I want to serve you. You are a great God, and I'll do whatever you ask. When I do that, that's when the miraculous happens. That's when I can't believe stories happen where I say, you're not going to believe what happened next. But it's not until I surrender. It's not until I recognize that, God, you're in control, not me. Can we bow our heads and pray? Father, I pray you'll help us to take this message and understand it clearly, because, Father, your faith is so simple, but we make it too complicated too many times. Lord, you're simply asking us to trust you for the promises you've made, but we're not supposed to make promises for you. So, Lord, will you forgive us for doing that? Lord, help us to come back to that simple faith of when I first chose to believe in you. It's all about surrendering my life to you, Jesus Christ. Living my life for you. And if it requires my life to do it, if it requires my family to do it, I will give it gladly, because, God, it's all about you, and I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. It's in Jesus' name I pray.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Pastor Matt. And speak with us about faith. To trust him and to know him. No matter where we are in our level of faith, Jesus still loves us and he cares. And as Pastor Matt was saying, our faith can grow. Our faith level grows as we gain more evidence of who he is and what Christ has done on Calvary. That's it. That is the gospel, folks. That is the gospel. So thank you again, Pastor Matt, for that. It was so powerful. It's still eating it up. It was so good. So, remember to mark your calendars for August 16th for our Sunday brunch online too. We're asking you to join us on August 16th if you can. Those that are here. Also, Pastor Matt will be here, and those that are here in the back. Any questions that you have about the services or the topics, even on faith or what he has spoke about, he is here to talk to you, to dialogue about it, because that's how we grow, when we dialogue about certain things. And even online, please give us an email or call. More than willing to speak with you about faith and any things that you, issues that you're going through, any questions that you have. We're here at Silver Creek Church to talk about those things and be real with you. We love you. Have a great week. God bless you. Bye-bye, Silver Creek Church.